The year was 1910. In a small room in Kentucky, a man lay motionless on a couch, his breathing slow and measured, his eyes closed to this world but open to another. His name was Edgar Cayce, a man who would forever change our understanding of what happens after death, and more importantly, what happens before birth. He wasn't wearing robes, he didn't have a long beard, he didn't call himself a guru or a mystic. He was a photographer with a 7th grade education who suffered from a peculiar throat condition that had plagued him since childhood. There was nothing in his background to suggest he would become one of the most documented psychics in American history. Yet when he closed his eyes and entered a self-induced trance, something extraordinary happened that defied all conventional explanation. His voice changed completely. The simple Kentucky accent transformed into a precise, articulate cadence. His vocabulary expanded far beyond his waking education. His speech patterns shifted to those of a scholarly lecturer, and through his lips came knowledge about medicine, history, and spiritual matters that seemed impossible for any ordinary man to possess. Impossible because much of this information would later be verified by experts or confirmed by archaeological discoveries decades after his death. The transformation was so complete that doctors who observed him were convinced they were witnessing a phenomenon beyond their understanding. One physician who initially came to expose Cayce as a fraud ended up devoting his career to documenting the readings. Cayce himself, upon awakening, had no memory of what he had said during these trances. When transcripts were read back to him, he was often confused by the complex terminology and concepts that had flowed through him. While in trance, Cayce diagnosed illnesses with startling accuracy for people he had never met, often located thousands of miles away. He needed only a name and location to connect with their physical condition. He prescribed treatments that baffled medical experts of his time, combinations of herbs, dietary changes, and physical therapies that seemed bizarre, but repeatedly produced results when conventional medicine had failed. In one documented case, he correctly diagnosed a rare form of epilepsy in a child that specialists had misidentified for years, and his prescribed treatment brought significant improvement. But beyond these medical readings, Cayce began to access information about something far more profound: the nature of the soul itself and its journey through eternity. As his abilities developed, he began describing with extraordinary detail what happens to consciousness after death. He spoke of levels of existence beyond physical reality, of the soul's review of its life experiences, and most remarkably, described the deliberate, conscious process by which souls select their next incarnation. This was the revelation that few truly understand, even among those familiar with Cayce's work. His detailed explanation of how souls choose their next family. This wasn't random assignment or karmic punishment, but a profound intentional selection process that serves the soul's evolution. Cayce described how souls, between physical lives, carefully evaluate potential family environments based on what lessons they need to learn, what karmic patterns they need to resolve, and what contributions they wish to make. This process, he explained, is so deliberate, so meaningful, that it challenges everything modern society believes about coincidence, fate, human connection, and the very purpose of existence. The medical community was initially baffled by his accuracy. Religious leaders were divided. Some saw his work as confirmation of spiritual truths, while others condemned it as heresy. Scientists were skeptical, but struggled to explain the documented results of his readings. Skeptics attacked his character, yet those who knew him described a humble, deeply charitable man who charged minimal fees for his readings and often worked to exhaustion to help others, despite the toll these trances took on his physical health. What makes Cayce's readings particularly compelling is their consistency. Over the course of 43 years and more than 14,000 documented readings, the information about the soul's journey remained remarkably coherent, building a comprehensive cosmology. of human existence that extended far beyond a single lifetime. Despite having no formal education in philosophy, religion, or metaphysics, Cayce articulated a complex spiritual framework that integrated elements found across diverse traditions while adding insights that were entirely unique. What he revealed about the afterlife wasn't aligned with conventional Western religious views of a place of judgment or eternal rest. Instead, he described a complex, purposeful journey of growth and evolution where consciousness continues to develop across a series of increasingly refined dimensions. A journey where souls, between incarnations, gather in learning communities, review their development, and make conscious choices about their next physical experience, including, most significantly, the family environment they will join. This knowledge, meticulously preserved in over 14,000 documented readings, now housed at the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, offers a perspective on human existence that few people know, but everyone should consider. For within it lies a radical reframing of human relationships and life circumstances, not as random accidents or divine punishment, but as carefully chosen vehicles for the soul's ongoing evolution toward greater consciousness and love. When the physical body dies, Cayce explained, the soul doesn't simply vanish or ascend to an eternal heaven. Death is not an end but a transition, a doorway through which consciousness passes into another state of being. You don't have a soul, Cayce would often say. You are a soul. You have a body. This distinction was crucial to understanding what follows after the final heartbeat. According to Cayce's readings, the moment of death is not marked by darkness or fear, but by an expanding awareness. The soul first experiences a profound sense of freedom, like removing a heavy coat after carrying it through a winter storm. Physical pain vanishes instantly. Limitations of the body fall away. There is often a sensation of floating or rising, and many souls report looking down upon their physical form and the surrounding environment with perfect clarity and a strange detachment. This isn't imagination or hallucination. It is the consciousness adjusting to its release from physical constraints. The soul finds itself existing in what Cayce called the astral body, a subtle, energetic duplicate of the physical form, but free from its constraints and ailments. This astral form is not made of matter, but of finer substance that Cayce described as spiritual matter or soul essence. It carries the imprint of the physical body, but without pain, disease, or disability. Those who suffered from physical limitations often experience a profound joy in this state as they rediscover movement, sight, or abilities that had been lost. To them, in physical life, in this initial phase, the soul often remains close to the physical world. Some observe their own death scene, witness the grief of loved ones, or even attend their own funeral. Cayce explained that this isn't due to morbid fascination, but serves as part of the transition process, helping the soul understand and accept the reality of its passage from physical existence. This period allows for a gradual adjustment, rather than an abrupt severance. The soul then enters what Cayce described as the borderland, a realm of transition where it begins to adjust to existence without physical form. This borderland isn't a location in space, but a state of consciousness, a vibrational frequency between the physical and higher spiritual realms. Here, the soul may encounter others who have passed on, particularly those with whom they shared strong emotional bonds, parents, children, spouses, even beloved pets. These reunions serve not just as comfort, but as orientation to the new state of being. Some souls, especially those unprepared for death or strongly attached to earthly concerns, remain in this borderland longer. They may not immediately realize they have died, particularly if death was sudden. They may attempt to communicate with loved ones, confused by their inability to be heard or seen. They may resist moving forward due to unfinished business, concern for those left behind, or simple fear of the unknown. Cayce emphasized that this is not a permanent state, merely a pause before the next stage of the journey. And that guide entities often assist these souls in understanding their situation and moving forward. What follows is not judgment, but reflection. The soul enters a state Cayce called life review, not as punishment, but as education. Unlike the brief life flashing before your eyes that some near-death experiences report, this is a comprehensive immersion. Here, the soul experiences not just its actions throughout life, but the actual emotional impact those actions had on others. A word that wounded someone is felt as that wound. A kindness offered is experienced as the comfort it provided. A promise broken is felt as the disappointment it generated. This review occurs outside of linear time. The soul may spend what would feel like months or years examining certain pivotal moments, while other periods might be reviewed more quickly. The purpose isn't to induce guilt or reward, but to provide complete understanding. In this state, there is no deception, no justification, no excuses, only truth and clear seeing. This process isn't overseen by a punishing deity, but by the soul itself, in conjunction with more evolved guide entities who assist in the interpretation of these experiences. The life review is followed by a period Cayce described as soul rest, a time of integration and healing. For souls that experienced particularly difficult lives, or those who caused significant harm, this healing period may be extended, allowing for the assimilation of the life review's lessons without overwhelming the consciousness. This isn't punishment, but compassionate spiritual rehabilitation. After this integration period, the soul begins to experience what Cayce described as the planetary sojourns, passing through vibrational states or dimensions that correspond symbolically to the planets in our solar system. These aren't physical journeys to actual planets, but passages through energetic realms that hold specific qualities and lessons. Mercury represents intellect and communication. Venus embodies love and relationship. Mars carries the energy of action and courage. Jupiter holds wisdom and expansion. Saturn represents discipline and structure. Each realm offers specific experiences for the soul's development and understanding. Throughout these experiences, this reflection isn't governed by arbitrary rules or religious doctrine, but by universal principles of consciousness growth. The soul sees clearly how it has grown or stagnated, where it has loved or feared, where it has expanded or contracted. It understands the patterns carried across multiple lifetimes, recognizes the lessons mastered and those still requiring attention, and begins to formulate an understanding of what experiences would best serve its continuing evolution. All of this, the transition, the life review, the planetary sojourns, the integration of lessons learned, serves as preparation for what Cayce described as one of the most profound aspects of the soul's journey, the conscious selection of its next incarnation. With clear understanding of its needs for growth, the soul begins the careful, deliberate process of choosing when, where, and to whom it will be born next. And this understanding becomes the foundation for what happens next, the soul's preparation for its return, and the conscious selection of its next family environment. In the realm between lives, Cayce described a profound process that few spiritual traditions have articulated with such clarity, the soul's deliberate selection of its next incarnation. This isn't random assignment or divine dictate. It is a conscious choice made by the soul itself, based on what it needs to learn, balance, or contribute in its evolutionary journey. According to Cayce's readings, this selection process occurs in a dimension he called the Council of Souls, or the Hall of Records, a spiritual plane where individual consciousness meets with guide entities and reviews the Akashic records, an energetic library containing the complete history of every soul. These Akashic records aren't physical books, but rather a vibrational field that holds the impression of every thought, word, and deed ever committed across all of time. When a soul accesses these records, it doesn't read information. It experiences it directly, understanding patterns across multiple lifetimes. At once in this council, the soul isn't alone. It is assisted by what Cayce described as guide entities, evolved consciousnesses who have mastered the lessons of physical incarnation and now serve as mentors to souls still engaged in the cycle of rebirth. These aren't authority figures who dictate the soul's path, but compassionate advisors who help the soul understand its own patterns, needs, and potential futures. Some of these guides may be souls the person knew in previous incarnations, perhaps a beloved teacher, a wise grandparent, or even a child who passed early but possessed great spiritual development. With the assistance of these guides, the soul examines its karmic patterns across multiple lifetimes. It sees clearly the traits it has mastered and those it still struggles with. It recognizes relationships that remain unhealed and promises unfulfilled. It identifies talents left undeveloped and contributions unmade. From this comprehensive assessment emerges an understanding of what the soul needs to experience next for its optimal growth. Cayce emphasized that this process isn't about punishment, but opportunity. The soul doesn't choose difficult circumstances to pay for past mistakes, but rather to balance energies and complete understanding. If a soul has experienced great wealth and misused it, it might choose poverty not as punishment, but to develop compassion, appreciation, and spiritual values. If a soul has wielded power over others harshly, it might choose a position of vulnerability to understand the other side of that dynamic. If it has neglected creative gifts, it might select a family environment that will nurture those abilities. The choice of family is never arbitrary. Souls gravitate toward family units that will provide the necessary circumstances for their growth. This selection is multifaceted, considering not just parents but the entire family system, including siblings, grandparents, and extended family members who will play significant roles. A soul seeking to develop compassion might choose a family facing hardship. A soul needing to overcome selfishness might select parents who will require sacrifice and service. A soul with artistic gifts to express might choose a family with genetic predispositions toward those talents. In one remarkable reading, Cayce described how a soul might select a family with certain genetic tendencies that align with the lessons it needs to learn. Perhaps a family with a hereditary illness that will challenge the soul to overcome physical limitations, or with artistic or intellectual gifts that will allow for the expression of latent abilities carried from previous lifetimes. These selections aren't random, but precisely calibrated to the soul's developmental needs. Contrary to common belief, Cayce explained that souls don't always choose ideal or easy circumstances. A soul might deliberately select parents who will be neglectful or even abusive if that environment provides needed catalysts for specific soul growth, perhaps developing resilience, forgiveness, or the determination to break destructive patterns. This doesn't justify neglect or abuse, but offers a profound reframing of difficult family dynamics as opportunities chosen by the soul itself for specific evolutionary purposes. Most remarkable in Cayce's revelations was the concept that souls often travel in groups across multiple lifetimes. Like a repertory company of actors trading roles in successive plays, souls incarnate together repeatedly, alternating positions to experience relationships from different angles. The mother in this life might have been your child in another. Your current sibling might have been a spouse, a friend, an enemy, a teacher. The person who harmed you in a past life may now be someone who loves you deeply, balancing the energetic scales and healing ancient wounds. These soul connections create a complex tapestry of relationships designed to facilitate mutual growth and the resolution of past dynamics. This explains the immediate recognition we sometimes feel upon meeting certain people, that inexplicable sense of familiarity, comfort, or even discomfort. It clarifies why some relationships feel effortless, while others trigger profound challenges despite our best efforts. It isn't random chemistry, but soul recognition. consciousness remembering connections that span centuries or millennia. Cayce described how souls sometimes make agreements before incarnating, contracts to assist each other's growth in specific ways. A soul might agree to play the role of antagonist to help another develop strength or boundaries. Another might commit to offering unconditional love to teach acceptance. These soul contracts aren't rigid scripts, but flexible agreements that allow for free will, while creating the conditions for specific lessons and growth. Cayce emphasized that souls choose not just their parents, but the entire constellation of their family circumstances, economic conditions, cultural environments, historical era, geographic location, and even specific challenges that family might face. A soul might select a war-torn region to develop courage, a family of different cultural background than previous incarnations to expand perspective, or a period of historical transition to participate in collective evolution. These aren't punishments, but opportunities. The soul seeking its next family looks not for ease but for growth potential. It chooses precisely the environment that will challenge it in ways necessary for its evolution, even if that means selecting circumstances that will involve suffering or difficulty. For from the soul's perspective between lives, the value of existence isn't measured in comfort or conventional success, but in consciousness expansion and the capacity for love. Why would any soul choose difficulty? Why select a family marked by poverty, illness, or conflict? This question lies at the heart of understanding Cayce's revelations about the soul selection process. His readings provided profound insights into this apparent paradox, challenging our conventional understanding of suffering and offering a radical reframing of life's most difficult circumstances. According to Cayce, the soul's perspective from the between-life state is vastly different from our limited human viewpoint. Free from the constraints of physical existence and emotional reactivity, the soul perceives with extraordinary clarity and purpose. What appears as suffering from the human perspective often represents precisely calibrated conditions needed for specific lessons and growth. The soul, seeing across multiple lifetimes, understands that temporary discomfort in one incarnation might resolve imbalances carried for centuries or create opportunities for profound evolution that could not occur otherwise. Cayce explained that the soul prioritizes growth over comfort. From this expanded perspective, a lifetime of ease and pleasure might actually represent spiritual stagnation, while one filled with challenges might catalyze tremendous evolution. In one reading, he described how a soul might choose physical disability to develop inner resources and spiritual perception that would remain dormant in a healthy body. In another, he explained how a soul might select poverty to develop creativity, resourcefulness, and appreciation for non-material values that wealth might not stimulate. This perspective doesn't justify suffering or suggest we should passively accept injustice. Rather, it offers a framework for understanding the deeper purpose behind life's circumstances, particularly regarding the family we enter. Cayce consistently emphasized that understanding the soul's choices shouldn't lead to fatalism or resignation, but to empowerment through recognizing the opportunities for growth embedded within challenges. According to the readings, souls often choose families based on karmic patterns requiring resolution. Karma, in Cayce's view, wasn't punishment, but a universal principle of energy balance and completion. If a soul carries the energetic imprint of having abandoned others in a previous life, it might choose a family where it will experience abandonment, not as punishment, but as a path to understanding and balance. This first-hand experience creates compassion, insight, and the opportunity to heal both the self and others caught in similar patterns. Similarly, if a soul previously misused wealth and power, it might select a family of modest means to develop appreciation for non-material values. If it neglected creative gifts, it might choose a family environment that will nurture those abilities, perhaps through parents who are artists or musicians themselves. If it developed intellectual brilliance but lacked emotional intelligence, it might select a family where emotional processing is emphasized over academic achievement. In some of his most profound readings, Cayce described how souls sometimes choose to incarnate with physical or mental conditions that create significant challenges. This wasn't divine punishment or random misfortune, but a deliberate choice made by an advanced soul seeking specific growth. A soul might choose a body with congenital heart problems to develop patience and inner strength, or select a family with a history of mental illness to develop compassion and understanding for those conditions. In one particularly moving reading, Cayce described a soul who chose to be born with significant physical disabilities into a family ill-equipped to handle them. This wasn't cruel fate, but a soul's courageous choice to serve as a catalyst for the family's spiritual development, while simultaneously working through its own karmic patterns. The difficulties this arrangement created weren't accidents, but precisely engineered circumstances designed to evoke specific qualities in all involved: patience, compassion, acceptance, and unconditional love. Cayce emphasized that these choices aren't made in isolation. There is a profound collaboration between souls planning to incarnate together. Future parents, children, and siblings make agreements before birth, sacred contracts to assist in each other's development. These aren't casual arrangements, but deeply considered commitments made with full awareness of the challenges they will entail. The mother who will test your patience was selected precisely because you needed that lesson in patience. The challenging sibling relationship was designed to teach forgiveness or boundaries. In his readings, Cayce described how a soul might request to be born to parents who would provide specific challenges needed for its growth. Perhaps a critical father to help develop self-confidence independent of external approval, or a neglectful mother to foster self-reliance. These weren't punishments, but strategic choices made by a soul seeking particular catalysts for evolution. Similarly, parents might agree before birth to welcome a difficult child who will push them toward greater patience, acceptance, or flexibility. Perhaps, most significantly, Cayce revealed that souls often choose to reunite with souls they have unfinished business with. The person who harmed you in a previous life might return as someone who cares for you sacrificially, balancing the spiritual accounts. The child you neglected in another time might return as your parent, giving you the opportunity to experience and resolve that dynamic from the other side. The rival who undermined your work centuries ago might become the colleague who supports your greatest achievements. These soul connections transcend the boundaries of individual lifetimes, creating patterns of growth across the tapestry of multiple incarnations. Cayce described how souls might incarnate together repeatedly, switching roles each time: parent and child, teacher and student, healer and patient, each arrangement offering new perspectives and opportunities for mutual growth. These aren't random associations, but carefully choreographed reunions, each providing the perfect circumstances for resolving past imbalances and developing new qualities. Cayce emphasized that these pre-birth choices aren't deterministic. The soul selects the circumstances and relationships that will provide optimal opportunities for growth, but free will remains operative within those parameters. The family environment may be chosen precisely, but how we respond to it remains our choice in each moment. The soul might select challenging parents to develop forgiveness, but whether and how that forgiveness manifests depends on choices made within the incarnation. This interplay between pre-birth planning and incarnated free will creates a dynamic field for soul development that honors both destiny and choice. In essence, Cayce's readings suggest that what often appears as misfortune from our limited human perspective may actually represent a soul's courageous choice to face precisely the circumstances needed for its evolution. This doesn't diminish the very real pain of difficult family situations, but it offers a profound recontextualization, not as random suffering or divine punishment, but as purposeful, soul-selected catalysts for growth, healing, and the development of love. If Cayce's revelations about how souls choose their families are true, they transform our understanding of human relationships and life's challenges. No longer are we random biological accidents or victims of circumstance. We are souls on our journey, having chosen our precise starting point for purposes our conscious minds may not remember, but our souls have not forgotten. This perspective invites a profound shift in how we view our family relationships. The parent who challenged you wasn't a random misfortune, but a soul you selected for specific lessons. The sibling who seems so different wasn't an accident of genetics, but a carefully chosen companion for your soul's journey. Even the most difficult family dynamics can be reframed, not as cruel fate, but as sacred agreements between souls seeking mutual growth. Cayce's readings suggest that we can access a deeper understanding of these pre-birth choices through meditation, prayer, and dream work. In quiet reflection, the soul can sometimes glimpse fragments of its larger purpose and the reasons behind its choice of family. Dreams, particularly recurring ones about family members, may contain symbolic messages about these soul agreements. By paying attention to the emotional patterns and recurring themes in our family relationships, we may discern the lessons we came to learn. This knowledge doesn't eliminate life's challenges, but it offers a meaningful context for them. The difficult parent becomes a teacher. The challenging childhood becomes a chosen curriculum. The family traits and tendencies become tools for specific soul development. Nothing is random. Nothing is meaningless. Everything serves purpose in the soul's journey toward greater awareness and love. Perhaps the most powerful application of Cayce's wisdom is the recognition that we are not victims of our family circumstances, but co-creators of them. This perspective empowers us to ask not, "Why did this happen to me?" but "What did I come here to learn?" Not, "Who is to blame for my family problems?" but "What growth is this relationship designed to foster?" These questions transform family dynamics from sources of resentment into catalysts for spiritual evolution. Cayce reminded us that the ultimate purpose behind the soul's choice of family is the development of love, not the limited conditional love of human emotion, but the expansive, unconditional love that reflects our true spiritual nature. Each family relationship, each challenge, each joy is a step on that path. When we understand this, we can approach our family connections with reverence, recognizing them not as random associations, but as sacred soul agreements, carefully chosen before birth for the highest purpose of mutual growth and the remembrance of our divine nature. The soul chooses its family not by accident but with intention, not carelessly but with precision, not for punishment but for awakening. And in this understanding lies one of Edgar Cayce's most profound gifts to humanity: the knowledge that we are not passive recipients of life, but active participants in a journey that spans not just years, but eternities, not just one lifetime, but many, all connected by the golden thread of purpose and the ultimate destination of love.